My apologies. Chairman Cohen, Ranking Member Johnson, and members of the subcommittee. My name is Annetta Seecharran. I am an immigrant from Guyana and the Executive Director of Chaya Community Development Corporation. Thank you for the opportunity to speak before you today. My testimony is based on my work with South Asian communities in New York City over the past 2 decades through 2 formidable crises. When 9/11 happened, I was the Executive Director of South Asian Youth Action, SAYA. And over the course of the pandemic, I have been serving as the Executive Director of Chaya Community Development Corporation, a Queens-based nonprofit serving South Asian and Indo-Caribbean New Yorkers. Over the past 20 years, I have witnessed how our communities confront a myriad of challenges layered on top of crisis after crisis. Looking back at the 9/11 attacks and its aftermath brings up many emotions for me. One of my cousins lost her husband in the South Tower. Yet, at a time of heart-wrenching grief, my family was also targets of verbal abuse and attacks. Days following the collapse of the towers, my family went to St. Vincent's Hospital with the hope of finding my cousin's husband. There, people shouted at us, "This is your fault." Later, at a 9/11 memorial service, my mother was told, "Get out of this country." Our experiences reflect the double grieving that many South Asians, Muslims, Arabs, and Sikhs endured in the hours, days, and months after 9/11. We grieved for the terrible losses on that day, and we grieved because we knew that a backlash was on its way, targeting and scapegoating our communities. This backlash manifested in different ways, from interpersonal violence to state policies that led to arrests, detentions, and deportations. Young Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs who visited Saya's community center shared how they were being followed by law enforcement, how they were afraid to take the subway or fly, or how they were being bullied at school. People became worried about doing the most routine activities, going to places of worship, eating at South Asian restaurants, going to Muslim schools, and visiting public parks. The cumulative impact of 2 decades of interpersonal and state violence is profound. And as a result, young people made different educational and vocational choices because of their outsider status. Many experienced heightened isolation, depression, and anxiety, which are still sources of trauma today, 2 decades later. There is a through line between the post 9/11 environment and today. Government agencies did not invest the necessary resources in our communities to ensure our well-being, despite the tremendous need in the wake of 9/11. Instead, government resources were allocated towards profiling and surveillance. This is true even as South Asians are one of the fastest growing immigrant groups in the country. There are 5.4 million South Asians living in the United States, with ancestry from Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Nepal, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, the Maldives, and the diaspora, including Trinidad and Tobago, my country, Guyana, Fiji, Tanzania, and Kenya. There is immense socioeconomic and educational diversity within the South Asian community. For example, in New York City, Nepali immigrants have the highest rate of uninsurance. Bangladeshi and Pakistani immigrants have some of the highest rates of poverty at 32% and 29% respectively. In the pandemic, an already challenging situation became much worse. In the wake of national crises, we must move through several phases: recovery, redress, reinvestment, and reconciliation. When it comes to 9/11, however, we seem to have barely scratched the surface, even though it's been 20 years. Congress can take steps, including investing in the well-being of communities affected by the 9/11 backlash by making long-term investments towards social services, recreation, education, as well as neighborhood programs and cultural and community spaces. Additionally, implementing equitable immigration policies, such as a pathway for citizenship for undocumented immigrants, temporary protective status for Nepalis, and providing supports to Afghan refugees. Our community groups have been responding with care and solidarity for 2 decades. We call for more hearings like this around the country to fully understand the depth of the impact on our communities. Further recommendations are in my written testimony. Thank you very much.